I was born in Birmingham, Alabama when my daddy was going to med school, and that was in 1963, April 9th, 1963. And then he graduated from med school and he joined the military, he joined the Army, so he was transferred to Honolulu, Hawaii. And we lived there for 1 year, and then he was transferred to Fort Knox, Kentucky. And so we moved there, and we were there for 1 year. And I'm trying to think, Amanda was born while we lived in Honolulu, Hawaii, so that was 1966. And then we would have moved to Kentucky for a year. That would have been in 1967. And then we moved to San Antonio, Texas, and we lived there for 3 years. And that's where I started first grade. So I'm not sure exactly which years these were, but I would have been 5 and 6 when we moved, somewhere around there when we moved to San Antonio. And we lived off base there. We lived at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii, and then we lived on base at Fort Knox too. But then when we moved to San Antonio, that's the first time my parents bought a house, and it was a little bit off base, very close to the Army base, but a little bit off. And then after 3 years in San Antonio, Daddy was transferred to Fort Carson, Colorado, and it was right across from Pikes Peak. So when we looked out our window, we could see the big, beautiful mountain, Cheyenne Mountain. And we lived there for 2 years. At that point, Daddy had his 7 years in the military, and he could either sign up for 7 more years or he could get out of the military. And they decided that they'd had enough of the military, and Daddy wanted to go back home to Alabama. So he got out of the military, and he tried to go back home to Dothan, to South Alabama, where he was from, but they didn't need a urologist in that area. So he looked around other places, and we had friends, Wallace and Sue Drake, who lived in Decatur, Alabama, which is extreme North Alabama. And they told him that Decatur was in need of a urologist, that Dr. Claude Lavender had just passed away, and Decatur Urology Group needed a urologist. So he called and spoke with them, and they wanted to interview him. So my daddy flew from Colorado Springs to Decatur and interviewed, and they offered him the job. So while he was there, he looked around at a few houses, and Dr. Claude Lavender's wife was selling their home. Since he had just passed away, she didn't need a house that big. So Daddy bought that house. He took Dr. Lavender's place in Decatur Urology Group, and he also bought Dr. Claude Lavender's house. So then he came back to Colorado where we were, and he said, "Good news, I've got a job and I bought a house." So Betsy was kind of sad. She was 15 years old and had friends, and it was a difficult time for her to have to move. The rest of us were young enough that we kind of used to moving a lot, and we weren't scared to move to Alabama. We didn't have a lot of ties to the Colorado area, so we packed up our station wagon, and the movers came and moved all of our furniture to Alabama. And 1973 we moved to Alabama, and that's where we've all lived ever since.